He's one of the legends of Indian cricket. He was the youngest captain of the team. In a game of gentlemen, he was a prince amongst men, yet he had one of the most difficult handicaps to contend with. No wonder they called him Tiger. Today he's my guest. His name is Mansoor Ali Khan Pataudi. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Karan.
Let's start with your nickname, Tiger. How did you get it?
Well, it was nothing to do with cricket. It was given to me by my parents when I was very, very young. And I think maybe perhaps a propensity to crawl around a bit too fast.
Crawl or prowl?
Well, maybe it came a prowl later on, but at that age it was more of a crawl. Most people think it's something to do with cricket and fielding, but it hasn't actually. It was given to me long before I even set eyes on a bat or a ball.
Now, cricket, of course, is very much a family tradition, wasn't it? Both your parents and grandparents were into it.
Yes, and my nephew also. He got 100 against the West Indies. Let's not forget that. But as far as my grandfather, who was president of the board in the late 30s, when, if you remember, Lara Amarnath was sent back for some kind of misbehavior in England. I forget what it was. And then my father played for England in 32 in the Bodyline series with Jardine. He was sent home because he didn't get on with the captain. I carried on the tradition to some extent by breaking Jardine's record at school, which I was very pleased with. And then, of course, my nephew, my sister's son, also played, got some runs against the West Indies. So it's been there. We've been brought up with this game and many other games. It was very much a sporting family.
Not just a sporting family, it was also very much an aristocratic family. Your father was the NawabPataudi, your grandfather the Nawab of Bhopal. I imagine you must have grown up in regal splendor. What sort of childhood was it?
Well, it was privileged, and there's no doubt about that. And but you know, if you look at in today's terms, I think I was lucky that I wasn't born, let's say, 20 years earlier, because I might have found it a little bit more difficult to adjust. And I was also lucky in the sense that even having all these privileges, we were sent off to school. I was sent off to England at a very young age, the age of 11. So, and there wasn't that much money. And so one sort of lived pretty well, very much as anybody else did.
Your parents were determined to bring you up like a normal boy, not like a little Lord Fauntleroy, for instance.
Well, I think that was the idea anyway, yeah. I don't know if it worked or not, but that was the idea.
Your father was a sporting genius. He represented India in the cricket team, in the hockey team. He was a great polo player. Were you very close to him?
Well, he died when I was very young. I was only 11 when he died. So, you know, one tries often to forget what one doesn't, you know, like remembering. I remember a lot of things about him, that he helped me with my cricket, that he was always around, that he was very fond of sports, and that, you know, but I don't really actually recall him too clearly.
He sadly died on your 11th birthday. That must have been a terrible blow.
Well, it was a hell of a shock for all of us, because he was only 40, or 42. He died on the polo field here in Delhi playing polo. Although he was a very keen player, polo player, he wasn't a very good one. And it was left to the mother to bring up 4 children, which she didn't do too badly. She
sent you off to Winchester to school, where you were the only Indian at the time. Was that fun, or was that a little intimidating as well?
Well, no, it wasn't fun to begin with, Karan, because, I mean, in the 50s, the British had just left. They still thought that they had some proprietary interests in India, or they might have returned to India. I don't know how they were thinking in those days, but, you know, in those days, if you happened to be a good sportsman, it made a big difference. And if you played cricket, which was the main sport in those days, at least for the public schools.
And your cricket really blossomed at Winchester, but I gather your first match there, an inter-house match, was quite a disaster.
Yes, it was, because I got somebody run out. I mean, that wasn't the done. I mean, the done thing was to get yourself run out in the old typical British fashion. I mean, but I felt, since I was going to score more runs than he, and that the idea was to win the match, I thought it was better if he got run out.
So strategy was coming into play even though you were just a teenager?
Yes, I think it's intuitive in many ways.
I've been told a lovely story. I gathered later on, when you used to go out to bat at Winchester, the cathedral bells would be chiming for you.
I think there's a lot of good stories, Karan, and many of them, of course, are not true. I'd be surprised if there may have been a coincidence, but I'd be very surprised if they rang for me.
Now, the year 1961 was a year of incredible highs and lows for you. It started with your becoming captain of the Oxford cricket team and also signing up for Sussex. Why Sussex?
No, I signed up for Sussex actually I played for them first in '57 when I was still at Winchester. Mainly because one of the masters, a guy called Hubert Doggett, who'd actually played for England in '57 against the West Indies, or '56 when the West Indies toured England, used to teach us or try and teach me. And the coach was from Sussex also. And though the family was more associated with Worcester,
which is also your father's old
which
team.
was my father's old county, these fellows suggested Sussex would be a better place. My guardians were also living. I was living in Sussex.
So it was more practical as well as
yeah,
the relationship.
it made more sense. And of course Sussex has a tremendous background of Indian, it had Ranji playing, it had Dilip playing Sussex, and so one didn't feel totally out of place.
Now, of course, the other thing that happened in 1961 wasn't such a nice event. You had a terrible car accident and lost your eye. What happened?
No, I think, somebody drove into us. We just finished dinner and going back. And it was unlucky because it wasn't a very serious accident. Nobody was driving fast or anything. It's just that the splinter went into your eye, and in most cases you would have avoided the eye, but here it was a bit of bad luck, and I lost sight of my eye, but I didn't lose sight of my ambitions totally.
Absolutely. In fact, how easy or how difficult was it to get back and pick up the game?
Very difficult, because if you try playing cricket with one eye, or try playing any game with one eye, even if you try pouring a glass of water, it becomes, you have to get used to it. So it took a long time.
It's like almost relearning from scratch.
Yes, and then there are disadvantages, because you really can't tell the difference, the distance, how far a thing is, and so driving becomes impossible, especially at night, because you just don't know how far the car or the headlights are in front of you. So you learn by experience, and you get out very stupidly, and obviously your whatever ambitions you may have had for yourself personally, you have to bring them down a little bit and be more realistic.
How did you keep yourself going? Because you were only 21 at the time.
Well, this is it. I mean, if I had been 28, I may have given up. But because you're 21 and because you think I want to fight this handicap, and
the tiger in you came to the fore.
I don't think it was a tiger. I think it was just a bit of frustration and annoyance in saying that, come on, let's do something about this. And so we tried.
And do something about it you definitely did, because by the time that year was ending, 1961, you were in fact playing for India. You were still at Oxford, but you were playing for your country. How did that feel, that first time on December the 13th when you represented India?
Well, it's always a great feeling. I think, when you step on the field and you're playing for your country. I actually started playing because I had to leave university. I wasn't allowed to read for a year because of the eye problem. So I came back to India, and here the people hadn't realized that I'd had a serious accident. So they said, well, no, you've been selected to play for India. So I said, fine, I'll give it a try.
And all worked well?
Well, it worked well. I mean, there were moments of great frustration and moments of, but there were certainly some very enjoyable moments.
In fact, it worked so incredibly well that by the next year, 1962, you'd become captain of the team, the youngest ever that India's had. At that moment, were you surprised, thrilled, or really very, very shaken and uncertain?
No, I don't think, it happened by default. The captain, American Tractor, was supposed to carry on for a few years. And they thought that maybe, after a few years, when he retired, if I was still in the team, I'd take over. But this fellow had a serious accident, so I had to jump into the fray. I must say that, a lot of senior players did help me, although one or two weren't very happy that this junior fellow become captain, but a lot of them did help. And,
technically, were you the junior most at the time, apart from being the youngest as well?
Yes, I think I was the junior most as well as the youngest.
And when this responsibility at this young age fell on your shoulders, were you nervous?
A little bit, yes. One was a little bit nervous, but as I said, people were prepared to help. One or two senior players.
You went on for 8 years as captain, and then after a break you were back for another year. As you look back on that period, what are the highlights that come to your mind?
I think the most enjoyable aspect of this was when India beat New Zealand, for instance, when we went on tour after 20 years. In fact, never been to New Zealand ever before, and most of us didn't even know where it was. And we beat them, and it's the first time India had ever beaten a side abroad. And that I think gave us special pleasure. Again, we played some matches pretty well, some matches pretty badly. Nothing much has changed in cricket, Karan. Indian inconsistency was there in those days, is still here.
People often recall the game that you captained when India beat Bobby Simpson's side in Bombay in 64-65, and you scored pretty well in both innings. Is that a special one for you as well?
Yes, it was, because it was a wonderful game of cricket, and it kept people on their toes. The spectators enjoyed it thoroughly. Eventually we enjoyed it too. It was very tense.
But that was a game that went up and down. That must have tested all your faculties as captain.
Yes, of course, and your nerves, and our nerves held at the end. There was a particular,
which is another rare feat for Indian cricketers, because often our nerves give way.
We were lucky enough to have somebody like Chandu Borde, who was a very experienced player, to get into the final minutes and save the game for us, to win the game for us, and it could have gone either way.
And then there was that glorious knock of 147 against Leeds in 67, I believe.
Yes, at Leeds, yes. That was also at, I think we were doing pretty badly. We had to follow on. And things worked out. It was a good wicket.
Would you call that a captain's innings?
Well, it to some extent, it didn't save the situation, but it improved the situation. We still lost the match, but we gave them a bit of a fright.
Now, commentators say that in many ways, Tiger Pataudi's greatest contribution was creating and nurturing the famous spin quartet. Did that just happen, or was that deliberate strategy on your part?
No, it didn't happen just like that. What happened was that we found ourselves with three great spin bowlers at the same time. And so there was little choice but to make sure that they spearheaded the attack. We had no fast bowler, and there was a situation where I remember in England Mr. Kundan opened both the bowling and the batting for India, which was a little embarrassing, but I mean, we put the spinners on pretty quick, and we realized that unless the spinners started attacking, our fast bowling wasn't going to get us very far. So it was a conscious effort to make the spinners improve.
But you were also in a sense making a virtue out of a necessity, and then you suddenly found that you had dynamite in your hands.
Yes, I think it happens that way, that if you give people who have a bit of talent, a bit of rope, that eventually they find their feet, and they do pretty well. And all these three spinners, and including of course Venkat Raghavan, they did us pretty proud.
Tiger, let's take a break there. I want to come back in part 2 and talk about what I call the other side of Tiger Pataudi, the non-cricket playing side. We'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stick with us. Welcome back. My guest is Tiger Pataudi. In 1965, you met for the first time the lady you went on to marry. Do you remember your first meeting with Sharmila Tagore?
Yes, I do. In fact, she came to Delhi, and I'd met her before that actually, but I hadn't really spoken to her. And I said, if you come to Delhi, please give me a call. And she did, but I wasn't here, unfortunately. When I got back from England, somebody told me there was a call from so-and-so. So I went to Bombay, and I thought I'd better contact her. So then I thought, well, she's so much in demand, I better think of something. Otherwise, she said, who is this guy? So I said, I brought a few things over from England, and how should I come and give them to you? So she seemed very interested, and she said, come immediately, So I went over, and I said, no, well, there's a lot of heavy fridges and so on, but I can't bring them in my car, I'll bring them after a day or two, and then that was it, and we went out for dinner. I don't think we had dinner.
She was, in fact, at the time, a very big actress, the belle of Bollywood, one could say.
Yes.
Is this why you had to resort to stratagem to win her attention?
I suppose so. I mean, I felt that maybe I had to stand in a queue or something. So I thought I'd better bypass that queue. What Indians are like, we can't stand in queues.
So offering refrigerators to an actress was your ploy?
Thought, she might be interested in a fridge or an air conditioner or something.
Hoping, of course, that she'd be interested in you instead.
Well, I hope that once I'd met her, I'd get her to change her focus a little bit, yes.
And to use the cricketing metaphor, did you bowl her over?
I don't think it was very immediate. I think she batted pretty well for a long time. And finally, of course, perseverance got through.
Now, of course, the late 60s were very different in atmosphere and mood to today, but I gather, in fact, you faced quite a few problems before you were able to get married.
No, not really, Karan. There were a lot of objections as such, but we were pretty well committed. I think her family felt, that marrying a nawab was a bit of a sort of dicey thing, because all these guys, the reputation of nawab that come from the kingdoms of Awadh and so on, were not very cheering for you.
And to be fair, you had quite a playboy reputation yourself at the time,
didn't you? Which is totally untrue, entirely untrue, and you know what the press is like, of course, they build up anything. And from my side, it was also a question, film actors and actresses are not exactly people that you should have total confidence in. So there was opposition, but I think that we were committed and we got married, and I don't think anybody's got any objections now.
Now, of course, when the world thinks of the name Tiger Pataudi, they think of the Nawab of Pataudi, they think of the dashing, romantic young cricketer, but I gather there's another side to you as well. You're a very playful, practical joke prankster, aren't you?
No, we've played practical jokes all our lives, mainly because, Karan, when you get a number of people together, let's say 16 or 17 members of the team, in our time, you know, we weren't playing every day. We played a match and then you had to spend 2 weeks staying together in a place where you didn't know many people or in a foreign country. So you tried to entertain yourself, and one way of entertaining was to try and play jokes on other people whom you felt may not enjoy them. And we played a number of jokes on a number of cricketers, and eventually we have been forgiven for our
There was an amazing one, I gather, you played in the late 60s on Prasanna and Chandrasekhar, wasn't there, when you...
That was Mother of India's effort.
Your disowning responsibility,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. It was in Gwalior, it was in his state, nothing to do with me. But yes, Prasanna was shot by dacoits, which seemed to annoy Chandrasekhar and Vishwanath greatly. It didn't annoy any of us. And I think he had a bit of mercurochrome in his hand. He stuck it on his chest and he collapsed. And we hauled him into a van and we took him home, and it became very serious because these guys thought he'd been killed. And both Prasanna and Vishwanath then started crying. They weren't on your program, of course. And no, we had to actually pacify them and say that, you know, can we get you a drink? Would you like brandy? Or he said, no, we want coffee. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I remember Mother of India telling me, where will I get them coffee at 4 o'clock in the morning? So I said, you better wake up somebody. And so, you know, we had a lot of fun.
So in fact, off the field, the Nawab is actually either a playboy when he was younger or a big prankster when he's not being a playboy.
Well, you can say that, but I wouldn't agree with that.
Your friends and your admirers say that Tiger Pataudi would have achieved a lot more had he been just a little bit less laid back. Do you accept that comment?
I'll accept a lot of things from my friends, Karan.
But is it true?
Well, one is a product of one's times, and if I was a bit laid back, I'm prepared to accept it, yes, but how much more I would have achieved by running around, I'm not so sure. I think I've led a reasonably happy and comfortable life, and that's the way I wanted. And people say that I don't have a great deal of ambition.
What do you say?
I say that I'm very happy, extremely happy.
Happiness is more important than ambition?
I think that if ambition makes you happy, yes. But if it doesn't, then I think the idea, presumably, is to be happy in life. How you achieve it is up to you.
Are you competitive in the normal sense? Is it important for you to have goals that you're constantly achieving and striving for? Or do you take life in the
No, I don't think that I've ever set goals like a lot of people do. You know, that in 3 years' time this should happen, in 5 years' time this should happen. I've been pretty lucky.
There's a marvelous story that once during a match in Calcutta when riots broke out and everyone else was tense and rather nervous and terrified, you decided to entertain the team in a very unusual way. No,
this is totally untrue. This is, I can imagine where the source of this story came from. But no, those are very tense moments because the whole pavilion was burning, and the police had used tear gas, and you know, our eyes were streaming in and streaming with water. And I went to the bathroom to wash my eyes with water, and there I saw the president of the Calcutta Association, the CAB, hiding in the corner with a huge briefcase. So I said, what have you got in that briefcase? And this is on the 3rd or 4th day of the match. So he opened it for some reason, and it was full of tickets, unsold tickets. So I said, you know, you're in trouble. He said, yes. I said, what are you going to do about it? He said, please help me. So I said, okay. You know, we took 2 of them and put them in our bus, having first ensured the fact that the crowd wasn't after us. Then they said, no, we're not after you, we want these guys. And we hid them under our pads and put our blazers over them, and then took them home and saved their lives. And a lot of these things have happened. And at that moment I saw Conrad Hunt. He came to me, and poor fellow died now. He said, how do I get to the top of the roof? So I said, what do you want to do on top of the roof? So he said, no, I want to bring the West Indies flag down. So I said, Conrad, that is brave of you. Will you please bring our flag down too also? I said, I can't do it, I'm running. Thank you. So, I mean, no, we've had our fun, and we've had tense moments also, but by and large it's really been enjoyable.
Now, of course, you probably had more experience of being captain than probably any other Indian, and everyone says that you were a great captain, not just of India, but Sussex, Oxford, Winchester, the All England schools team. Looking back on it, what would you say is the quality that makes a good captain?
I think, you know, one can mention a lot of things like, you know, one must be honest to one's job and one must be true to oneself and all that. That is there. But I think, you know, the captain who has that little extra is the one who can anticipate what is going to happen a little earlier than other people.
So a sixth sense.
There is some kind of intuition that you have that, you know, if I do this, this might happen, or this is likely to happen in the next 15, 20 minutes, so let us try and put a stop to it now. And if you have that intuition, it gives you a certain advantage. But that comes with a lot of experience also.
And how much of that intuition is just luck?
A lot of experience and understanding and remembering, because things repeat themselves. And if you remember occasions that may have happened 10 years ago, a similar kind of occasion, then you tend to react to it.
So the longer one's been captain, the better one gets at being at it?
Presumably, yes.
They say that selectors and cricket boards often play politics with captains, trying to create rivalries between them, yourself and Wadekar, Kapil and Sunil Gavaskar, Sachin Tendulkar and Mohammad Azharuddin. Do you share that view?
No, I think that's a little unfair. I think the press does more than the board does. And the board would like, the board doesn't like creating too many controversies amongst players because it affects the game and eventually affects their own image. But it is the press which loves to do this, which is okay with us. We all understand it.
You take the press with a big pinch of salt?
No, our press has been reasonably good to me, and I have nothing against it. But we understand that that they will create some kind of sensation, and the players among themselves, unless they've had a tiff, most of them get on pretty well.
And now, as you approach your 60s, what are the things that interest you, that excite Tiger Pataudi?
Well, you know, things haven't changed all that much. I mean, I've always been very fond of... Excite me, I tell you what really excites me, is the sight of a wild elephant, really, with his ears stuck out and his trunk stuck out, coming at you. I mean, that terrifies me and excites me, and it's always done it throughout
And how
my
often
life.
Does this happen to you?
It happens 3 or 4 times to me at parks, at Corbett Park, or when we've had the opportunity of traveling abroad, maybe in you know, Kenya or Zambia.
And when this happens, has Tiger stood to the ground or has Tiger turned and fled?
No, if you flee, you've got no chance, because then you're just asking for trouble.
So it's challenges really that excite you?
Yes, I think that's right. There has to be some challenge for some excitement.
Tiger Pataudi, thank you very much for this wonderful interview.
Thank you.